Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Ebbsfleet Development Corporation Planning Committee. We're going to start with general introductions and then we will turn to the agenda. My name's Neil Cameron and I chair this committee, and I'm a non-executive director on the Development Corporation. I should have said before that the meeting is being recorded and will then be posted on the corporation's website after the meeting. I'm going to go around. Just before I do, I'm going to welcome Councillor James Mackin, who is the new member of this committee and a Kent County Councillor. So welcome, James. And we also have another welcome. Gravesham have nominated a substitute member, Councillor Reginder Atwell, who is available to stand in when Lee is not available. So welcome to Councillor Atwell as well. Right, we'll now do our introductions and I'll hand it to Valerie.
Hello, good evening. I'm Valerie and I'm Vice Chair of the Planning Committee and non-exec at the EDC.
Good afternoon, I'm Penny Marsh and I'm an independent member of the Planning Committee.
James McInroy, as Chairman said, I'm newly appointed Kent representative, Deputy Cabinet Member for Economic Development, and my division is Tunbridge Wells West.
Thank you. And we've got three members of the committee online. Who'd like to go first? Fred, you look as though you're ready to go.
I'm ready to rock, Chairman. I'm ready to rock. Fred Marudas. I'm a non-exec on EDC board and a member of the Planning Committee.
Who's going to go next? Lee.
Lee Croxton, Gravesham Borough Council, Chair of Planning. Apologies not being here in person and missing the last meeting because of technical difficulties. But I'm coming from one Teams meeting and going to another one a little later. So time is short, but looking forward to meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us. David.
Hello there, I'm Councillor David Moe from Dartford Borough Council. My cabinet portfolio is housing, and like Lee, I'm bouncing between meetings as well, so I'll probably be having to shoot off a bit quickly at the end as well, I'm afraid. But ready to rock and roll, as Fred said. Good. We're going to turn to the agenda. We have as item 5 a hub at Alfredon. Various members of the committee will not be participating in the discussion on that item because of their various involvements in other organisations. So what I'm proposing is we put that item to the back of the agenda, that we deal with all the other items, then we deal with the hub planning application as the last item, and those who can't be with us can then leave the meeting. So is everybody content with that?
Yep.
Good. So apologies for absence. We haven't had any. Declarations of interest. Any declarations in addition to the standing declarations, David?
Only in the as you already mentioned, I'm a trustee of the or I'm Ebbsfleet Borough trustee, so obviously can't contribute to the hub conversation.
Yes, I'm Vice Chair of the board for the Ebbsfleet Garden City Trust.
Right, so we're going to allow the three of you to leave before we get to that item. Any urgent items?
No, Chair.
We have minutes of the last meeting, which was the meeting held on the 25th of September this year. Can we approve those minutes? Good, they're approved. Thank you. Right, so we're going to go on to land at the former Northfleet Cement Works, Northfleet, which is item 6 on the agenda. And we're going to follow our normal procedure, which is officer presentation, up to 10 minutes. Then we have no objectors registered. We've got supporters registered, and the supporters get 5 minutes in total to make a presentation. You know the system. And after that, the committee will likely to have questions for the supporters, and that is to seek clarification. And once that has been done, we'll have committee debate and decision. So I'll hand over to Wendy, you making the presentation.
Also direct your attention to the supplementary agenda, which details 2 further representations and also has a copy of the publication from the applicants that was circulated to committee members yesterday. What is proposed before you is an application for reserved matters of access, layout, scale, appearance and landscape in relation to phase 3A of Harbour Village development in the Northfleet Embankment West allocated area. The proposal comprises 273 dwellings together with associated infrastructure, an area of public open space and community facility, as well as proposing to discharge relevant parts of conditions 9, 11, 14 and 15 of the Outline Planning Commission EDC 4 as they relate to the phase. So the Northfleet and West area forms part of the Northfleet Riverside Strategic Development Area, which is a key regeneration opportunity of both residential and employment land. So this photograph shows the site highlighted in yellow in relation to Robbins Creek, corner to the west, the Northfleet Embankment West employment area, land to the east, the Hyde Estate, Northfleet High Street and Northfleet Station, and to the north, all within reasonable walking distance from the site. The vacant and derelict Evans Jetty is also seen within the River Thames to the north. The key matters for the development relate to the creation of a sustainable and high quality riverside place, including new dwellings and open space, the living conditions of future occupiers of the proposed units, the impact of the development on the living conditions of residential neighbours, the impact on residential non-residential neighbours, matters of flood risk, impact on high water, as well as matters of ecology, heritage interests of the area. So this slide shows the location of phase 3A in relation to the other phases of Harbour Village, as well as the recently completed footway cycleway bridge from phase 1B to Evans Park, Heritage Site Park. This slide shows the proposed layout with 7 buildings, 5 buildings to the north of the new fast track route that will run through the site, and 2 to the south of the fast track route. All of these blocks meet the height of the approved parameter plans, arranged from 4 stories in height to the south in the southern area, and then 5 stories and rising to 9 stories, a 9-story landmark tower facing more Robbins Creek in the northern sector. Blocks D, E, F and G have podium level gardens, communal gardens for residents on the roof of parking areas. Adjacent to Robbins Creek and the Thames, River Thames, the area, public open space in the form of a promenade park through which will be routed the King Charles III and Coast Road. So starting with the northern part of the site, the ground floor layout of the buildings comprises internal parking areas, entrance lobbies, cycle parking, ancillary plant rooms and bin stores, and then also a significant amount of active frontage onto the public realm and the streets. In yellow, you can see the community facility, business lounge in green, concierge service in pink, a residence gym in lilac, and additionally there's 3 ground floor level residential units. And this slide just shows some of the active frontage areas. The design narrative for this northern part of the site responds to the industrial riverside character area within the master plan. The design of the 4 blocks D to G invoke a sense of historic riverside warehousing with equal spacing, repetition of build form, ranging perpendicular to the riverfront. The linear form of the buildings, construction, intelligent detailing, cable to roof forms with chimneys. This slide illustrates some of the careful detailing of the entrances, showing the high quality finish proposed for the build form. And this slide shows the massing of the proposed buildings, including some of these buildings on the southern side, which are 4 stories. Building H is a 9-storey triangular landmark building at the western end of the phase, and this slide shows the location of the main part of the community facility facing Robbins Creek. A typical floor plan of the upper levels showing both projecting balconies and balconies located in the recessed corners of the build form. On the roof of the building will be both PV panels and ground roof, both of which would also be located on blocks A, B and C. So on the pitched roofs, blocks D to G would be PV panels. The design of the landmark tower is seen here with large distinctive signage on the 2 facades referencing industrial warehousing. The Riverside Promenade Park has had to be carefully planned to provide a green and high quality public realm with the various requirements of the park, such as heritage boards, play and gym equipment and artwork, while also providing level access with the Environment Agency to access the existing flood defences. As the site is located in flood zone 3, buildings have a finished floor level of 8 metres AOD, and a series of steps and slopes provide access down to the English Coast Path level. This slide shows some of the tracking for the operational vehicles that are required to access the flood defences for repair and maintenance associated with the Environment Agency. We then have this slide showing the routing of refuse and emergency vehicles by what is otherwise a dedicated footway cycleway to the north of the buildings. And at all other times, this is to be blocked, bollarded and locked route. This slide just illustrates some of the changing levels from block H of the community facility down to the riverside, and it also has this flood defence operational area, but which is level for an Environment Agency, but still incorporates lawn and shrub planting and requires to have installation of demountable street furniture within that zone. In this slide, they're showing the configuration of the community facility. The planning condition on the outline requires the provision of 250 square metres minimum for the community facility. There is about 350 square metres shown here, but the space is divided between buildings H and G. There's 3 parking spaces provided for the dedicated use of the community facility, and suggested condition 23 requires the agreement of community building management plan. In the southern part of the site, block A will provide 30 units of affordable rent, B and C, 52 units of shared ownership. This altogether equates to 30% affordable housing in a tenure split that's in accordance with the Section 106. In block A here, you can see there are 8 M4 Part 3 units, which is housing for people with mobility issues. This is 2 more than the requirement of 6 in the Section 106. The majority of apartments within blocks A, B and C are dual aspect to provide a better living condition for occupiers. The ground floor apartments also would have direct access to the street, which increases their usability and also increases street level activity. Architecturally, these 2 blocks respond well to the Georgian Town Capital Area brief within the master plan. And at the bottom level picture here, it shows the direct access of the ground floor level unit to the street. And at the bottom part here, you can just see how the building responds to the phase 2 buildings, which are houses, and just has a slight step down in stories to the rear. What we have here is the 5 indicative parking zones for those who have parking permits and live within the development. About 86 of the units are car-free units. In addition to the parking spaces, there has been the applicant has agreed the payment of a unilateral undertaking to Gravesham Borough Council to potentially install and manage a controlled parking zone within adjacent neighbouring streets. Within the site itself, all of the streets are to be retained in private ownership, and there's a suggested condition for parking management plan. This slide shows the general layout. So we've got visitor parking spaces, residential spaces, specialist parking spaces, car club spaces, community spaces, and also delivery space. So overall, the proposal performs well against the building topics. with 10 greens and 2 ambers. It broadly accords with the principles and parameters established by the Outline Planning Commission, the Master Plan and planning policies, as well as meeting EDC's aspirations for the Norfolk Riverside, for high quality residential development and community facility. And this application is accordingly recommended for approval, subject to the conditions laid out in the report and the planning obligations set out.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for the helpful report. Well, right, go to the supporters. Actually, it came in well on time. There we go. Right. So Gregory Evans.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Gregory Evans from Savills, and I am Bellway Planning Agent. Bellway and its team are really excited that this important phase of Harbour Village at Northfleet is finally before committee members for consideration. The application was submitted over a year ago, and since then we've worked very closely to overcome some issues raised by consultees which were not identified at the outline application stage or when the residential master plan was approved. We've worked collaboratively with KCC Highways, Gravesham and the Environment Agency over this time, and we are really pleased that your officers recommend that Phase 3A is recommended for approval. This key phase of Harbour Village will deliver 273 new homes, including 82 affordable homes. It comprises riverside apartment blocks, including a 9-storey landmark building. The design is considered to be of very high quality and goes over and above the design vision set out in the master plan. A new landscaped riverside promenade and open space will be available for all to use and is included in this scheme. This opens up this part of the River Thames to the public for the first time. 2 community spaces are included, which deliver 350 square metres of purpose-built floor space. This is 100 square metres larger than that is required by the Outline Planning Permission. These spaces have been designed flexibly to enable a range of future community uses to come forwards. Extensive engagement with the local stakeholders and community groups has taken place over the last 2 to 4 years to inform their design. We have extensively discussed car parking with officers, KCC Highways and Gravesham Borough Council. A total of 204 parking spaces are provided, including 3 dedicated spaces for the community use and 3 car club spaces. This level accords with the standards set out in the Ebbsfleet Sustainable Travel Strategy, and every parking space will include an electrical vehicle charging unit. The scheme provides individual air source heat pump cylinders for each new dwelling, along with brand roofs and solar PV panels. There is a carbon reduction of over 60% compared to what's required by 2021 building regulations. Bellway is proud of its Harbour Village development. A new community is being delivered at the sustainably located brownfield site that lay unused for many years. Construction of the first phase is well progressed. There are already 50 residents living at Harbour Village. Phase 2 is also under construction, and Bevans Park, which is the heritage park, is also progressing very well. The new pedestrian footbridge has been installed, and the public park will be completed next summer. Thank you, officers at EDC, for working cooperatively and hard with Bellway and its team to arrive at this positive position. Thank you, Chair and committee members, for your time this evening. To conclude, we respectfully request that members approve this application for the delivery of new and affordable homes at the Garden City. Bellway and its team are here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee members, any questions? Yeah, that's great.
After mind. Yeah, can I thank you for your presentation. Can I ask about the charging units? You said there'd be one for every parking space. Will they be kind of run commercially, and will they be affordable, and will they be fast or will they be slow?
So there is a there is a condition requiring details of how the EV chargers will be operated and managed long term. I might ask Harrison at Bellway if he has any further details. If not, we can agree the right condition.
Usually the EV charging we install is fast, and depending on where it's located, if it's located on plot, it's relatively easy to connect. Off plot, we've got a solution, but that's slightly more difficult to make payments for. I think it would be commercially run, I think is the answer.
Okay. Yeah, just I know in previous situations sometimes it's not been affordable for people because it's been commercial prices.
Yes, being a new member and with global warming and the proximity to the River Thames, I just was going to ask a little bit more about the flood provisions, defences, apart from the Thames barrier. Is there any, I think it was alluded to by Wendy, some specific measures being taken, have they, to
Yes, that's right. So levels at the site must be a minimum of 8 metres AOD, which has been agreed with the EA as a level above the flood risk level. And there's also a requirement by condition about stability of the river wall at this location, and that must be completed prior to works to the north of the fast track area, which is all the works along the river edge, to ensure that the River Thames wall and Robbins Creek wall has stability. Also, levels of the site are raised above potential flooding levels.
very much?
Lee, I think you've got your virtual hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just interested in the park area, Promenade Park. Will any members of the public be able to have access to that, or is it going to be exclusively or predominantly for those people living in the area? I'm just wondering about wider access to the river there. And the other question, which I think has always been asked, in 273 homes, how many actual car parking spaces are we likely to have? And again, how is that decline going to be managed? Thank you, Chair.
Shall I take the Riverside Park question first? We've got Jeremy Lord, the landscape architect, who could describe that in detail.
This is just about, it's mainly about access.
But I think the answer to access is yes. It's fully publicly accessible, including the public right of way, which runs along the Riverside Promenade. So it's access to the public.
Can I just ask about that? And does that include the bit between blocks F and E?
Yes, it's not.
So
it's
that
not,
people living, for example, in the Hive estate who come down through the development can get straight through to the river.
yes.
If you're promoting this as first time access to the river, so it'd be reassuring to know that people can get there.
Yes, it will be. Jeremy, is there anything else you want to add about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think you've said it perfectly. I mean, it's all about opening up access to the river, getting better views out into the river. We've got a fantastic opportunity for a piece of public realm there, and then there's access. I mean, we've got a number of things we've had to overcome in terms of levels in particular, but there is that route that goes right around the Thames, right around the outside edge, which is completely accessible. The whole of the park is completely publicly accessible, and also, yeah, from Hive Lane, that link that goes right through the middle of the site and ends up at that quite prominent point right at the end on the Thames. It's really important to keep that open anyway, but yeah, it's all public.
Parking.
Felicity, do you want to set out the parking provision at this scheme?
Yes. So as was said by Wendy in the presentation, there's 204 parking spaces across the whole phase, of which those will be broken down in visitor spaces, car club spaces, spaces for the community centre, and then residential parking. The residential parking is 183 spaces for the 273 units, which would be managed by permits by Bellway at the time of sale of each property, and and visitor parking and those permits for residents would be managed by the management company. Further details, I believe, are conditioned. Greg would be able to set out condition numbers in terms of more information and detailed reports being provided to support those.
Yeah, that's right. There are some, that's right, there's 204 spaces in total. There will be some units which will be car free, and Bellway will be informing all the purchasers of those units that they do not have a parking space when they're purchased.
Lee, does that, you've still got your hand up? Did you have something else? And then I'll move on to David.
No, thank you. I'm delighted with the public accessibility and going through the various spaces to River. I think that's very, very important. And yeah, good luck with the car parking. But yes, as soon as I work out how to get my hand down, it'll be down. Thank you.
David, that's the move.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, to be honest with you, Chair, it's not a question. It's more an observation. I quite like this present. I like this development. I think it comes together very well. My only other observation, of course, is the question of the roads that won't be adopted by the KCC, and I guess that's where most of the charging points will be, because I think we've discussed in previous applications the fact that EDC don't like their pavements to have conduits through them. My concern, of course, is the fact that in the future these roads will become the responsibility of the management company, and then by association may have an impact on the management charges for people who are going to be living in these properties. But I'm sure that's something that will be explained to people as they move in. But on the whole, I have to say that I'm quite impressed with this. So that was all it was. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just ask a question? It's on the community centre, and I appreciate that the space requirement was set out in the outline planning. You've exceeded that. Why is it split into 2 spaces in one building and 1 space in another building, rather than putting it all together so it can be used for different sized community events? And it's good that it opens up down to Robbins Creek, but why have you got 3 separate spaces rather than 1?
I think that was an intentional design move. So when we've done the consultation, that there's been a lot of interest from a lot of different groups. So at that point, we took the decision that actually we think it will work better to have 2 slightly separate, where they're designed to that they could talk to one another and be run by one person. So we're thinking at the moment that that's 2 slightly differing uses. You've got 1 slightly bigger space and 1 smaller space. And I think for the smaller space, the vision at the moment is a community-run cafe, and the size of that is in line with other community cafes we've delivered elsewhere. It's actually larger than one we've delivered on another scheme, which has been particularly successful. So that's the vision, and it was an intentional design move. The other factor is Block H and its footprint is working very hard. You couldn't get, even if we thought it was the right thing to do, all of that 250 square meters in the ground floor because of bins, bikes, other plant requirements. There are other design reasons, like creating additional active frontage onto the Riverside Park, which we think is a real positive. So an intentional design move on us, which we think has more pros than it does cons.
Penny, yes, and then we'll go to Fred.
Thank you. Yeah, just a follow on from that. So if one of the potential uses would be a community cafe, is there a commercial kitchen going in, or is it just looked to me like a kitchenette?
So we've designed it at the moment to show a kind of typical potential floor plan. So I guess there's further details are required by condition. We'll have the capability of adapting to a slightly more commercial community cafe.
Valerie, did you have a point on that, and then we'll go through?
I had a number of points actually.
Right, shall I go to Fred and then come back to Valerie?
Neil, can I ask a question of officers? Is that allowed, or is it just of the proposers?
I have a question of officers, yes.
And it's around the balconies, which I was wondering whether they're consistent with our style guide on balconies.
Right, with the style guide, there's the aspects it's there of wanting to be differentiated, particular bespoke character.
I can't really hear that well. Sorry. Would you mind repeating that? That was not very clear.
I'm sorry. In terms of the, because I don't have the guidance in front of me, is it in terms of the design or in terms of the size?
The design, they look like they're kind of stuck onto the side of the building, and I was under the impression that that wasn't consistent with our aspirations in that regard.
Certainly, there's been a lot of discussion during the application process. There is a differentiation between the buildings on the northern section and the buildings on the southern section. Certainly, the balconies on the northern section are cantilevered. We also have the recessed balconies in the corners of the block H. In terms of the those on the southern section, there has been discussions. Yes, ideally, I think we would have liked it that those were cantilevered also. Partly what was explained to us is that due to the modular build process that was being used, it wasn't possible to have those as cantilevered, and therefore we had them stacked with the poles, which is a slightly more generic approach. What the applicant therefore has tried to do is make there be more of a bespoke approach in terms of colour, and in terms of things such as making sure that the underside is about a colour as well, and not just left as industrial and just galvanised as it comes through. So there has been attention, and there has been within the limits of what we thought could be achieved with the different technical builds. We have we made the decision that on balance this is an acceptable approach.
Can I suggest that we finish questions of the applicant's team, and then we come back to the specific question about consistency with the balcony design guide, because I can't see the balcony design guide referred to in the list of documents to which our attention is drawn, but it might just be covered under design for Ebbsfleet. So shall we park that for a moment? But we'll come back to it when we finished with questions for the Valerie.
Thank you. I do like the design of the scheme. I must admit the blocks themselves are really attractive. When I was reading the report, there seem to be quite a few things that aren't quite resolved, really. And there's a whole swathe of comments from the Gravesham housing officer, not necessarily about the actual mix, particularly the 30%, but about the numbers of 1 and 2, indeed 3 bed in relation to affordable, shared, and so on and so forth, and also, whether you have the wheelchair ready units and so on. And I wasn't clear how much flexibility there is within the numbers and how, or whether it is possible to get closer to what would be the desired outcome, clearly from the Gravesham housing officer. If you can comment on that, or if that's one that we should take later.
That's something which we can answer. I think part of the design of the stacking of the buildings has led to the mix as well in terms of units. And it was noted that there was a few they would like to see possible some larger units, some 3-bed units, but they've also said that on balance, the design of the scheme, what's being proposed are the affordable units. acceptable. And a lot of that's been led by the design that this is quite a heavily flatted site. That's why the unit numbers and the unit mix has been proposed to forward. And yeah, I did note their comments in the report. They did say on balance it is acceptable.
Thank you.
I'd also add just on the affordable mix. We our affordable housing partner for the site is Moat, and they're very happy and comfortable with the mix we've got. And we're about to start progressing legals, and we're finding it incredibly difficult to get a housing association partner on board and happy. So we think the fact that they're happy is a really important factor.
Yeah, that is helpful because again, in the report, the housing officer talks about the future relationship with the RP and so on, doesn't it? And in terms of access again, and indeed back to the famous parking, just received the paper of the breakdown of £64,000 of consultation, and then depending on the outcome of that, having a parking area. But the bulk of that money is for influence, which refers to me that there isn't much confidence that actually it's going to work. Otherwise, why would we be, specially designated officer?
We debated parking at length with Gravesham, EDC and KCC. We're very comfortable that the parking quantum and the proposed on-site enforcement action won't result in, and the fact we will be selling and making it clear to our customers those units which don't have cars. We're very comfortable with Bellway, who will be managing the on-site parking. There won't be an off-site issue. Gravesham took a slightly different view, and then we've been having negotiations over some off-site enforcement money. I think it's fair to say we didn't wholly agree with that position and conclusion, but it's something we have accepted, that is to deal with the scenario that at some point in the future there is off-site parking. That's not a position we think we'll ever be in. So it's kind of agreed through gritted teeth, I think it's probably fair to say.
And then
in terms of parking, if I could just add that the approved sustainable travel strategy that EBSU has in place sets out that this location is highly sustainable. And for dwelling sizes of 1 and 2 bedroom units, which are flatted units, which the majority of the scheme is, the parking should be provided between 0 and 0.8 spaces per unit. So it's all been envisaged there would be car-free units being proposed and built at this location, which would and that document was also endorsed by Gravesham, I understand, before it became approved. And with this being a sustainable location, we do hope that there shouldn't be pressures on the surrounding area. But if there is, they'll enter into that UU, so there's money there to make sure that those pressures don't impact on local residents.
So in terms of the units that don't have any parking, are they family houses, or are they all attributed to apartments?
They're all flats, and they're most likely to be 1 beds, so smaller units.
Yeah,
so,
and for younger people, presumably.
Yes.
Okay, it's helpful. And linked to that, KCC are saying that the vision displays for cars, people, and indeed bicycles don't comply. Clearly that's something we need to address. And similarly, the Kent Fire and Rescue also say that they're not happy with the access. So there's other highways type issues that don't seem to be resolved again.
We don't think that's the case. So there is, I think, 1 or 2 isolated issues where the vision displays, there's landscaping effectively in the 2-metre pedestrian. The only place I think that exists is on blocks F and E, where you've got the gates, and your cars are coming out. Technically, you have to measure visibility displays, not from the lane, not the middle of where you're turning out of the gate. So I guess we've got an option to either lose landscaping, which we're resistant to do. That would be a solution to that, but we're more than comfortable at the speeds that vehicles will be turning in and out of the parking. The 2 by 2 metre displays are intended for 20 mile an hour private drives, I believe, rather than turning in and out of a parking area where no cars will be going 20. So we think on balance, actually, we're comfortable that won't cause any issues. We're hesitant to reduce landscaping to deal with that, but that would be one option.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think the committee don't have any more questions for you. Thank you very much. We'll now move to our own debate. So I'll ask you formally to move back from the table. Thank you very much indeed. Right, open for discussion. But before we do that, Wendy, are you able to help on the balcony design guide?
In terms of the balcony design guide, it's wanting balconies to be generally appropriate for the facade, and that is certainly the case here. We have a balcony for every unit. We have no balconies on the northern side of the Rocksteed to G. They all need to be space that allows for the number of occupants intended for the unit to be able to sit out. John, in terms of privacy, another change that has happened is that the ground floor units for the residential units, the height of the wall has been increased at the back edge of the footpath, which isn't actually shown on the slide that I showed because it's an earlier version. But the applicant has agreed to increase the wall height and decrease the bathing height, responding to the needs for privacy for those units. It is a balance, and in terms of distinctiveness, there is the difference in the two designs between the industrial area and the Georgian Town area. And there have been changes that have been made from throughout the process. So it is in a balance. Clearly, with railings, sufficient enclosure. Some of this is dependent on the individual, isn't it? So certainly Simon, our design lead, has been involved in all of these discussions. The applicant has responded in various ways to discussions about the balcony, and we are happy on balance that the guidance is as far as we can do with the proposal as it stands.
Thank you.
Balcony design guide does fall within the suite of documents followed by EDC guidance.
That's what I thought, and that's why there isn't a specific reference. Anybody's views who would like to contribute? No, are we all generally Valerie?
So can I ask another one really? The report says that there was this recent investigation, not exactly the timeline, about the Robbins Creek wall structure and the need for this new retaining sheet pile wall, which sounds pretty expensive piece of kit to me. And are we confident around the sort of overall deliverability of that, I suppose, but also the viability, therefore, of the scheme itself? Because it's pretty important that we deliver affordable housing component, isn't it?
In terms of the delivery of those retaining structures, that is clearly secured by condition prior to the development in the northern part of the site coming forward.
Yeah.
In terms of overall viability, 30% affordable housing is proposed, which does meet the requirements of the Section 106 and meeting applicant is retaining to be within the Section 106. So there is nothing at this point that has been raised that would indicate to us that it's not viable and it's not proposed. There's been no viability assessment submitted so we accept it as it's proposed.
Thank you.
The
Sorry, Chair. I think it's a very interesting scheme. It's a good use of space. So I think it's going to be quite an attractive place to visit. I know there's fast track there. I'm slightly concerned about Vista parking, but that's a different issue. But yeah, I think in terms of the development, Great, looks really good and exciting.
Yes. Any other contributions before we go on to make a decision? Well, we've got a recommendation in front of us, which is for approval. Is that proposal agreed, or does anybody, if anybody takes a different view, we can have a formal vote on it? So you've got a thumbs up from David, thumbs up. Lee, you've just given a thumbs up. Fred, well, we are taking a vote on it now, so let's take a vote on it and do it properly. So the recommendation is therefore accepted unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, well, thank you, Wendy, for that presentation. We are now going to move on to the major urban.
We just need a couple of seconds just to move some planning officers around the place. So just 2 seconds. Probably set that.
Good.
And you will unshare your screen as well. I think that's okay with me.
Space. Do you need to go and get them? No, I think it's no, I think they were there. The goose had this.
We got some move like that we got. Yeah. Right.
Right. Okay. Right. If we just try and kick off, if we can, then
Yes,
please.
that's all right. Right, everybody, same procedure as before, so I don't need to introduce it. We start with the officer presentation, up to 10 minutes, and it's Jay, is this your presentation?
It is. It should be arriving on the screen any moment. I'm ready when you are, Chair.
Good, go ahead.
Okay. So the proposals before you tonight are made by Eastern Quarry Limited and seek permission for all reserved matters for the first extensive phase of the major urban park, comprising a high-quality landscape amenity space and formal sports and recreational facilities, including but not limited to a multi-use urban square, a basketball, football, multi-use games area, an informal grass 9v9 football pitch, 4 dual-use tennis netball courts, an outdoor gym area and 2 children's play areas. The application is made in pursuant to conditions 2 and 25 of Eastern Quarry Outline Permission. The application is cited. The application site is located with the Eastern Quarry, also known as Whitecliff, which forms a strategic development site within the EDC area, comprising 3 urban villages, Ashmere, Alcaden and Castle Hill. Built-up areas are separated by accessible open space, including the major urban park situated on this map between Alcaden and Ashmere. The master plan for Whitecliff embeds principles of sustainability, creating walkable neighbourhoods, ensuring this leading outdoor space will be within 10-minute walk for most residents within Eastern Quarry. The fast-track bus service also runs through the centre of the site, intersects the park, facilitating easy access via public transport from neighbouring communities in both Dartford and Gravesham. The site is The site encompasses the southern phases of major urban park between the market centre and approved Alcadon South residential phase to the east, and the future phases of Ashmere to the west, and extends approximately 5.5 hectares. It broadly forms a linear corridor which is subdivided by 3 roads: Fast Track, the Primary Road South, and Alcadon South Secondary Street. The planning framework for Whitecliffe is extensive and complex, whereby the principles of development are drawn down through a suite of parameter plans and strategy documents, as well as obligations for the Section 106 agreement. These inform the site-wide master plan, area master plans and design code documents, which instruct and guide the reserve matters application, as demonstrated by the flowchart on screen. Tonight, the proposals are at the reserve matters stage. Before we get into the detail of the scheme, I'd like to highlight that the design of the park and its facilities have been influenced by community feedback captured through well-publicised programme of public engagement events and co-design workshops undertaken by the applicant's team. And this has shaped the proposals, including provision of a wheelchair accessible community garden, teen-focused social spaces, skate park elements and basketball mooga. Opportunities for further co-design are also identified by the applicants and have been secured by condition. The landscape design has also been influenced by the work by the principal artist, Christopher Tipping, reflecting the site's rich history and unique character. Chris has also worked with the designers to identify specific public art commissioning opportunities for the park as a whole, including a landmark canopy within the urban square, bespoke seating and embedded artworks which can link together, creating public art trails. An indicative delivery plan has been provided, which broadly accords with the Area Master Plan and Design Code and the overarching public art strategy secured by the Outline Planning Commission. And final design details and timings for delivery are secured by condition. The detailed layout of the park can be described through 3 distinct areas: Whitecliffe Square in the north, the recreation and sports plateaus in the middle, and a skate and community area to the southern extent. Summarising the key design elements for each of these areas, we shall start in the north Fast Track at the base of the cliff, where there's an inclusive sensory garden is intended to be developed with stakeholder involvement. This garden is complemented by terraced lawns, informal ward seating and an alternative hammock area. South of Fast Track, Whitecliffe Urban Square provides a key hard landscaped community space which can accommodate various community events. This space is accompanied by grass lawns and cafe spill-out spaces from the adjoining market centre and the public art campy structure previously referenced. Further south, the space accommodates the first play area, which utilises the quarry and character of the site. Motion-activated water play feeds into accessible watered rills and collection pools and can be manipulated via mini dams. Wheelchair-accessible play diggers will allow all children to take part in excavating and moving sand and play gravel, and concrete pipes are utilised throughout the space, providing opportunities for climbing, jumping and passing through. Beyond the principal play area, informally grouped lounge style seating, pergola structures and group swing have been incorporated with the Make Space for Girls campaign in mind. To the south of Whitecliffe Square, a 9v9 grass football pitch has been designed for an informal use by the public and should operate for the benefit of the whole community, not only for the playing of football. 4 securely fenced tennis and netball courts will be available to members of the public via a booking system, similar to that established at Castle Hill tennis courts. West of the courts, an outdoor gym area is proposed, and beyond the courts to the south, a second neighbourhood-equipped play area is designed around woodland activities. Specification details for outdoor gym and play is secured by the conditions alongside full construction details of the sports pitch, courts and access and management plans. To the southern extent of the park, a wheelchair accessible community garden has been co-designed with Ed Seat Design Group and Cement Fields and will focus on the reuse of materials to provide planting containers and other elements. Adjacent to this area, the basketball and 5-side football mooga is proposed in an open court design to encourage a wider range of users. The mooga is complemented by hard landscaping, playful line marking, skate park elements and robust street furniture, all aimed at young adults and teenagers. Common design elements have been woven through the length of the park. These include wooded swale corridors which run along the western boundary and circulate the site's surface water. Adjoining the swales, the chalk seam walk winds through the park and is designed to provide an alternative walkway and a character and habitat based upon the underlying chalk of the quarry. Soft landscaping has also been specified to dynamically reference the site's history through the use of flowering specimen trees, which in blossom will create a temporary spectacle reflecting Alcadon's heritage from fruit farming to chalk dust. Given the park is situated amongst residential development and integrated with fast track, most visitors will walk, cycle or take public transport. Thus, formal vehicle routes within the park are limited to a small section within the south of the scheme, serving 3 proposed disabled parking bays and the existing wastewater treatment works. Numerous routes suitable for walking and cycling integrate well to the site-wide movement routes. Principal east-west connections are predominantly focused on pedestrian movement, while wide, informal leisure routes shared by pedestrian cyclists run north to south on either side of the park. These connect into the circular leisure routes around Castle Hill, up to the market centre, and facilitate 2 points of connection for the major park north scheme when that comes forward. Cycle parking is also well provided for, with 115 cycle spaces provided across the key focal points. Secured by design, safer parks and make space for girl design principles have been considered to improve the safety and inclusion of all users, especially women and girls. The design ensures all edges are well surveilled by adjoining residential and commercial developments. Active uses of facilities have been distributed through the park, which create a busier, active public realm where people can feel safe. Physical barriers around the football basket, Muga and skate areas have been removed to make these areas more attractive to a wider range of people, and planting is planned and managed to assist visibility. Inclusive design has also been considered in a range of routes and spaces within the park, specifically catering for users with different neurodivergent needs, such as dementia and autism, and is considered to be accessible to an ageing population with minor design improvements secured by condition. The security park is also assisted by an appropriate lighting strategy, which includes low-level bollards lighting, pedestrian masts, and lighting to sports facilities, which detailed lighting plans to be secured by condition. These are complemented by a well-considered colourful street furniture concept for the full length of the park, zoning colours to enhance the different character areas and assist wayfinding. Proposed planting across the park provides a great variety of flowering for pollinators and puts forward a strategy for natural regeneration, which should result in the best establishment of the right plants in the right place and resilient planting in terms of drought, biosecurity and ecology. The proposed hard material palette is largely consistent with the management materials previously used in the quarry, with additional clay pavers and crushed chalk as part of the distinctive chalk seam pathway, and black tarmac enlivened with colourful line marking as part of the youth and play areas. Final details and samples of hard surfacing materials alongside detailed planting plans are to be conditioned. As summarised in the committee report, the design, layout and access to the pro sports and recreational facilities are considered to be in general compliance with the requirements of the Section 106 and the Community and Leisurely Facilities Strategy secured by the Outline Planning Commission. Planning conditions are also proposed to secure construction and surfacing will accord with relevant Sports England guidance. And in respect of sustainability, consideration is given to water consumption and carbon emissions associated with the construction and operational phases of the development. Planting has been designed to be low maintenance and drought tolerant. Water play elements use clean water supplies, which are less likely to become a future maintenance burden. And reductions have been made in the design process to reduce the overall hard landscaped areas and associated embodied carbon. Overall, the proposals are of an exceptional high quality and provide a wide range of recreational function and facilities. The proposals are called well with the Area Master Plan and Design Code for Alkerdon and sets out a good quality design, achieving 10 out of 12 greens in the building with nature assessment and 41 greens across the 9 public health check indicators assessed as part of the Ebbsfleet Park and open space design criteria. In conclusion, this is a positive and commendable scheme which will deliver a series of high quality, accessible and green and blue spaces for the growing community and a significant piece of green infrastructure within Ebbsfleet. It is therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions detailed in the committee report and supplementary information.
Thank you very much indeed. We have a registered supporter, Joe Gerard. If you'd like to sit just at the table there.
Thank you.
And I don't know whether you were here earlier, but you have 5 minutes to say whatever you'd like to say, and then we may have some questions.
Okay, shall I start now?
Yes, and we're quite keen on keeping to the 5 minutes. The officers have just given exemplary performance on that.
Excellent, thank you. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk here this evening on the Major Urban Park. My name is Joe Gerard, landscape architect and director of Define. On behalf of my client Camland, I manage the landscape design team responsible for the planning and delivery of the green infrastructure in the Whitecliff development. The park will include various facilities secured in the community and leisure strategy for the wider Whitecliff development, but also those identified through the design and the engagement process. Our focus through the design stage has been to explore the character and feel of the park, to tune into the site's history and better understand the local community, to make it somewhere that is unique and special, while still providing the required facilities set out in the previous planning stages. At the start of this process, we began working with the artist Chris Tipping, whose research and observations delved into the rich history of the site. Whilst presenting his giant workbooks, Chris would take people on a journey from an historic Kentish landscape to one carved out of chalk. Through working with Chris, our designs have evolved to celebrate this process. We've proposed to use swathes of waste chalk alongside hundreds of new blossoming trees to create this landscape, and in his turn, of blossom and dust. In addition to this, and working with the public art consultants Francis Knight, we've developed a public art strategy that sets out a number of other commissions through the park that will be developed in more detail at a later stage, such as embedded artistic interventions within the hard surfaces and a new feature canopy in the centre of Whitecliff Square. The engagement with the public and other interested stakeholders has brought us great joy. We attended the Fusion Festival in the Platinum Jubilee Park, where we had set up a stand. We talked about the parks and what people liked. We talked about the site's history, what was happening in the future, how people use the new parks like Jubilee, or how they would use other places nearby like Jeskins Park and Beacons Wood. We also used this day to invite people to our co-design workshop in the community hall the following week, an event that saw us developing several areas of the park in more detail with pens, lists, and in some cases Play-Doh. Both of these events gave a fantastic insight into how the parks are currently performing and what we would love to see in the future. We realised there was a clear desire for more youth provision across the site, particularly in the form of a new skate facility and basketball area we've subsequently included in the proposal. Our co-design process has incorporated working with local youth through cement fields, which included a new community garden that will cater for those in society who might feel socially isolated and will benefit from such a facility. Our aim through this extensive design process has been to propose a variety of spaces for a broad range of people. This led us to propose a sensory garden in a tranquil spot on the edge of Whitecliff Square, include an area for hammocks so people can relax and look at the chalk cliff, propose an informal sports pitch for kickabout with friends or just passing a frisbee to each other. Put the Keep Fit area together so friends can use it while socialising, to include a 5-metre wide circuit in the centre of the park for roller skating or learning to ride a bike. And finally, to develop a play area designs that let children play with water or make dens. And not only does this park cater for the public, it also provides safe haven for habitats and wildlife. Running along the western side of the park is a generous green corridor that will be planted with a range of important native species. This will connect the existing woodlands in the north to those in the south, and will contain a mosaic of different habitats that have been developed alongside the site's ecologist. So in summary, the design for the park has gone through a process that has been rigorous and extensive, which has resulted in a high quality landscape design. This application for the major urban park south will be the first of 2 applications that combine to form the largest of the parks in Whitecliff. This significant milestone in the project will eventually combine to bring together the neighbourhoods of Ashmere and Alfredon, and then subsequently create a connection to Swanscombe when the second piece of the park is completed. We believe that once complete, this new public park will play a huge role in the lives of those who live here in Whitecliff and the surrounding neighbourhoods of Swanscombe and Green Heights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask? Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Are there any proposals to charge for any of these facilities, or are they all totally free, including the tennis courts?
They're all totally free. The tennis courts will be managed in a similar manner to the ones in Castle Hill.
Sorry, I'll clarify, Joe. The tennis courts won't be free. They're bookable and they'll be chargeable. I think that in terms of there's a condition that's actually requiring that detail to come through. The tennis courts at Castle Hill currently operate. I'm not sure if they're free or if they're subsidised for residents, but they are bookable for the community outside of that area as well. So that's kind of secured and the level detail of it. All the other areas are free, accessible, although the football pitch would be also bookable on certain events to kind of add for a revenue stream if as and when required, but this is secured by a planning condition.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much.
Lee.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I've been through a number of these in Gravesham, and the community really does get excited by these sorts of developments, and they use it very frequently with great enthusiasm. But the problem does lie in who maintains it, at what cost, who supervises it, and maintains the necessary safety standards. Now, I don't want to be a killjoy on this one. I think it's really exciting, but I don't find anybody has so far talked about the ongoing maintenance costs, which are particularly high and associated with these sorts of areas, particularly where it has high community use. Thank you, Chair.
Who'd like to answer that?
I mean, I can clarify from the submission that the park is to be managed and supported by the resident service fees, so that there is the service fees that pay for the management and maintenance of these areas. But I think what Define have done with their design is to really kind of, although the images are obviously very attractive and appealing, the maintenance regimes and the way that they've used natural regeneration is actually, and the materials that they're using are of good quality, but are not of terribly high cost. And therefore you have a balance and an easy maintenance and a robust and resilient scheme that is easily to kind of maintain, to replace and repair, because of that thoughtful and considerate design of the elements that have been put in. So yes, there is a cost associated with these spaces, and they would be associated with the residential service fees. There is the cost of the tennis courts and those other kind of revenue streams that can complement that. And there's potential for ongoing stewardship with the condition to kind of give a thoughtfulness for the RMG management company. So the applicant is, the landowner is reliant on the estate management company, is what they've put forward, would be the people that run the space. And they currently run the spaces across Castle Hill as well. We have the condition that requires further information about stewardship and management that looks at trying to find out more information about, you know, the revenue streams and future management to supplement those fees. But it is a difficult point. Ideally, they wouldn't be reliant on service fees, but that's not the situation that we've got with these schemes coming forward on Castle Hill. They are reliant on residents.
Fred, I think you might be next.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't quite hear the tennis courts. Are they solely tennis courts, or did you say they were sort of multi-purpose pickleball? Or
they are multi-purpose in terms of netball and tennis. Sport England were consulted and advised that there should be flexibility around those, and the applicants have suggested that they can be swapped over between tennis and netball very easily. Full line marking and access is secured by condition that might allow for, you know, these other sorts of sports to come in to play, but primarily netball and tennis is what's being proposed on those four courts.
I'd strongly urge thinking about pickleball and indeed paddle potentially. I mean, frankly, they're far more accessible than tennis is.
I wonder if we could put in an informative to advise on those points.
We could do. We should be here for the applicant at the moment. So
Sorry.
Yes.
Are there any other questions maybe for the applicant?
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes.
That's been one, which is around safety and secure by design and so on. There's been obviously a lot of attention to lighting and so on. But the dock officer seemed to be consulted at the time, although you did refer to the documents. And there is a divergence in that the dock officer is saying that the play spaces should be enclosed, secure. And we've heard, an explanation as to why not an inclusive, open and so on. But actually, if they're enclosed, one, they keep the children in, toddlers especially, so it's safe, but also you keep other people out. I mean, there's stranger danger, but frankly, dogs as well. And not just fouling, but dogs often don't like scrabbling around, shouting at children. It could be a danger to the children. And I didn't see a sort of explanation really that kind of addressed, I get the visual appearance and the beautiful images, but how do we deal with the safety and security issue around? I'm not talking about, the big areas, but the small children's play spaces if they're not enclosed. I honestly can't think that I've ever seen a park of that type which is not secure, literally, for little ones.
So in the outline planning documentation and guidance, the loss which we've used, it does reference that we're looking to use best practice, which is not to enclose with railings, but to use natural boundaries, so level changes, seating, change of level. This is widely accepted now across a lot of the country, unless we're in a situation where you've got hazards created mainly by cars and vehicles, in which case we do tend to start using railings, etc., because of the running sort of element of toddlers, etc. Generally across the site, and we've delivered one down in Castle Hill in Jubilee Park, which again is using these methods, and so far it hasn't had those issues and those problems. In fact, we're using all the loose gravel, loose sand and everything else down there. And what that creates is this a different atmosphere to one that would be enclosed. So as long as we're taking it away from the main hazards of the roads, then those are the key principles that we look to address. In terms of safety, it's been an ongoing debate for a number of years with various elements, and I've sort of been in the centre of both sides. I think the key thing, and what that works and what has worked really well down in Castle Hill so far, is lighting. And that's allowed people to use the space safely into dark periods of the day. So in October, for example, people are using it at 8 o'clock, 7 or 8 o'clock, and these are families going down with children. And that's been a great success so far. And all the people that I've spoken to, the public, have never sort of raised that concern that their toddlers are either in danger or they feel unsafe in those spaces. So we're trying to, we are aware of that. We need to also be careful about. Well, that's the way we're taking the play areas forward at the moment in Ebbsfleet. In the play areas in this design, it's a much bigger play area than the ones we've done before, and it's going to be providing for probably an older type of children than the ones we've done previously. Having a bigger space that's enclosed, that's wider a part of the park is important for the children's development, not only in that they're not just restrained to just using these individual pieces, but actually the whole space as a whole. So they can play games, they can meet their friends, they can do various things apart from the whole park. So that's where we are.
That's another good one. On the football pitch, Sport England said it's, not a formal pitch.
Yeah.
It's recreational, but is it full size? Or can our young people play a proper game of football?
Yes. So 9v9 isn't that dissimilar from a full size adult pitch. You're probably a few meters away from that. And in fact, we can fit a full size pitch on there if we wanted to. Just change the design a little bit. So we consulted with Sports England, and the key thing there is we're providing adequate drainage to Sporting standards, adequate gradients, surface, and we're actually maintaining it in a certain way so that it gives a bit of relief throughout the year when it might not be used so much. The reason why I've gone for the 9v9 and the informal pitch is because through public engagement consultation, particularly on this site, as you know, there's not many flat areas, it's an old quarry site, and we get a lot of requests for, can we just have some flat grass, can we just have a decent bit of flat grass where people can use that space, have a bit of an informal kickabout. At the same time, we wanted to do it in such a high quality and specification that it actually is usable, it doesn't turn into a bloody quagmire. So because we have the school, which has a number of other sports pitches available for organised events, organised football matches, teams, etc. We wanted to keep this area as a bit more of an informal use, but at the same time, high quality so that it's usable throughout the year.
You've actually touched on something else. I'm not sure if it's for you or the emphasis, sorry, Shay, which is around the drainage, because KCC seem to be nervous, frankly, the way this is written about the drainage and requiring a full drainage model and so on, and even goes far to say that actually if it doesn't work, that there need to be changes to the scheme. And I can't gauge from the report how well, the potential impact, as it were, if we're talking about a small area, or is it the totality of the site? You know, what might arise from this model when it's done? Sounds a bit bonkers because we haven't yet, but you know what I mean. How big an issue is this? Is what I'm asking.
It's well, the drainage has actually been designed for a number of years, and actually we take the water down to the lake at the bottom, and we pump it back up to the top, and we drive it back down through the swale again, and then we take it out to the Thames. The reason why that detailed model hasn't been done yet is because of they were going to do that later in the process, basically before they build it. It just requires a bit more finessing. In actual fact, it's very unlikely it's going to change size at all because we've kind of oversized it in the first place. What we will do is probably finesse it and craft it into a series of pools, similar to how we've done another sort of big swale on the site as well. It's a really generous corridor. If it was to go wrong, however that might happen, it's still going to go through the park and then end up down in the lake at the bottom. Huge capacity out there for taking things forward. This isn't one of the SUD strategies where it takes water and then holds it, and takes water and holds it like a waterfall, because in the nature of the phthalic sand that we use, it's more a transferable swale. So it's not really going to go anywhere other than the lake if something was disastrous to happen, which I can't imagine.
And can we deal with this? Would there just be another application? How would we deal with it?
Into detailed conditioning.
But I think, I'll let Shay answer in a moment. I'm looking at 662 in the report, which envisages when the major urban park north develop, you have to look at the drainage from that. You may need a further submission to make changes to the arrangement.
Yeah, and this drains south, and then the major urban park north, which is as well drains the north. Yeah, so that actually high point of the site is fast track cost.
Right. Any other questions for Joe? Penny.
We're talking about water. Where will be the source of the water for the children's play?
It's possibly water supply, so it comes from the mains. And it feels like an awful long time ago now. We were looking to put a standard water feature in the centre, but times move on. And we've been working with the play designer, Timber Play, who developed the play areas in Castle Hill as well. And they've had a really successful scheme in the centre of Sheffield, which allows children effectively to come and pump the water themselves, take the water, do various things with it. And if they all work together, they can get all the water to go to the centre of the scheme, in which case they start working together to dam it and to play with it that way. The beauty of having a potable water supply is, it sounds a bit crazy, or it sounds like you're leaving the tap on. And it is actually one of the more sustainable ways of having a water feature, because we've got complete control of it, so we turn it off. So in winter you turn it off, and the scheme doesn't rely on it at all, because there's plenty of other stuff to do. But of course, then it makes it safe to drink as well. If they wanted to drink it for whatever reason, it wouldn't be causing that threat. So you're not introducing chemicals, recycling water there. It just drains into the swale and it goes away.
Any other questions for Joe? Well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to our general discussion. And if anybody's got any questions for Shay, this is probably now the time to raise them as well. Has anybody got any it seems to me that a lot of thought has gone into this proposal. I'm interested in some ways in how people access it, connectivity either side, but I'm satisfied on that. And there are lots of different areas. And it seems to me that if we're concerned about enclosure, and I think it's particularly the Mugger area we'd be looking at, we could require further details to be submitted under a condition of that, unless you're going to tell me that there's a condition that covers it.
In terms of the Muga, the Muga has been designed to be open to allow the area to be inclusive to more people. I think Valerie's reference was to do with the play areas, as in the neighbourhood play areas for
That's
children.
in Whitecliffe Square.
Well, Whitecliffe Square is one, and then you have a second one to the south of the sports plateaus. There is, in terms of conditions around landscaping, there are conditions around those, but I would kind of stress that if you were looking at those, I think that what Joe has kind of outlined about the design of particularly the Whitecliffe Square areas where it's couched within these other areas, that you wouldn't have that risk of running away, perhaps further ones to the north, which is a little bit closer towards where we might introduce those. But planning condition 7 refers to hard landscaping and would also have details of boundaries in there. Oh no, condition 9 relates to boundaries and fencing.
So it's there already.
Would dogs have to be on the lead? That's sort of the management thing, really, but I guess that would reduce.
Reference to dog fouling and signage, I think was preferred, was detailed, and it would be a management decision. I think a lot of the areas around Castle Hill rely on that principle that dogs should be kept on a lead. I know that through public engagement, I think there was a desire for there to be dog walking areas where it would be off lead, but that would be down to a management decision, I think, in that location. So we have this site and the open area on Castle Hill that's been launched in the Jubilee year, so fair few years ago. We don't have those kind of concerns coming around from that, from the community liaison groups that are there, that they're not being brought forward.
Thank you. We got 2 hands up. I think Lee, you're number 1, and then David.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great scheme. Anything like this, it really needs to have a community buy-in to support it and maintain it, and in a sense, supervise it. My experience has been, and I've been bitten on the bottom with a number of these schemes previously, is that the more successful they are, the more they attract, the more expensive they are to maintain. And I'm sure there is a very effective business plan. I mean, I've not heard much about that, but what worries me is that leisure areas like this do not come cheap. They do need supervision. They do attract large numbers of people, not always the people we might necessarily desire to be there. But if it works, and it looks as if it might work, and there's enthusiasm for it, that's great. No problem.
Actually, David.
You're on mute.
I think you're on mute, which was the universal cry.
There you go. You're on mute. Right. Thank you very much for that. I would agree with what Lee says, but I know that there's plans as part of the legacy work in Ebbsfleet that will probably look after a lot of the concerns that he suggested. But he is quite correct in suggesting them. But I think there are actions ahead that will look after that. The existing areas around Ebbsfleet are used very effectively, I think, at the moment, and I look forward to seeing this joining that pantheon of leisure activity. My only concern, and I think it's a concern of many people, is that people have a habit of travelling to these places by car. So I'm looking at a plan as we're talking. Travel to these places by car, and I noticed that there's a cafe terrace and an amphitheatre and events plaza, but I'm not terribly sure how one would get there in a car or whether you'd park in a street, only because the nearest route to that is a fast track, which will be fast track buses only. So I also echo Neil's thoughts about the access to this particular area from other areas. It was said that it will be easy. I don't think it will be easy, to be honest with you, because all these routes run east to west. Very few of them run north into the existing communities, as far as I can see. So unless they drill the hole through the spine at Blue Water, it may not be quite as easy for people to access this from outside the area. But it is there for the people in the area, because it's going to be a lot of their management fee that's going to be paying for this, along with other contributory factors. Sorry, I'm rambling, but my concern is going to be people who are attending anywhere or wanting to go and enjoy these areas from outside the area will drive there. And I have a bad feeling, like they had in the existing Castle or the early stages of Castle Hill, people from surrounding areas parking all around residential areas in order to get to the new swings that were built there, because it was an exemplary play area which everybody wanted to use. Is that being taken into consideration, or are we hoping that everyone is going to walk there?
Shay, perhaps you can answer this. I mean, it's close to the market centre where you're going to have
Yes.
a small town centre.
Yes, so there's going to be public parking facilities as part of the market centre within Alcadon. So that's adjoining to the centre of the major urban park, to the south of this particular application site. So that's where you will have the opportunity to have like private parking vehicles. And the residential schemes that adjoin the park will have their own management scheme, parking management regimes introduced as and when, or should they arise with issues of indiscriminate parking or parking from outside. So I think that's quite it's reliant within the existing phases of Castle Hill to have some kind of parking management regime that would prevent those the indiscriminate parking from outside the area, and we would draw people to use it and to access the park via sustainable modes with fast track and the connections through from the north, which will be expected to occur from Swanscombe and Greenhithe as well. So I think that the satisfying answer is the market centre is there and it provides parking, albeit limited, and people should be travelling by fast track bus or foot or cycle. That's the established vision for Ebbsfleet and for Eastern Quarry as well.
Right. Thank you. Penny.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited because I think there's a lot of things that I know people have been talking about here. Can I just ask, I noticed in terms of being really practical toilets, that the intention was that the hub would provide that. How far is the walk from the Southern Park to the hub if you've got a desperate child?
So I'll put this one up here, which gives you your 5-minute and 10-minute walking radius. And the hub is right about where my cursor is hovering there. So within a 5 or a 10-minute walk from the extent of the entire park. I think it's also relevant to note that obviously the applicant raised concerns with the ongoing maintenance of putting from toilets facilities in from day one, but have future-proofed it should the ability to put them in at a later date come forward, and the funding mechanisms to do that, being that the majority of residents should be using them from the surrounding areas. There may not be that requirement, but that gives you the idea of how far you would have to go from the southern extent. 5-minute walk up the park.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was going to ask about the future proofing because I thought I'd read that. Thank you, Shay.
Any other contributions on park? No. Well, we ought to move to a vote, and we do it properly this time. So we've got a recommendation to approve, subject to conditions. Those in favour? That's unanimous again. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to officers for the presentation, the work on this, and to the supporters representative. Thank you very much indeed. Because I know that a lot of work goes into this, because I recall that we had a pre-application discussion on this, as we did on the last application, and feel it's particularly pleasing that some responses have been made to observations made then, and it's a better way of doing it than coming here and being turned down. Present in advance. So thank you. Right, let's move on. So
It's worth noting, isn't it, that I think David Moats left the meeting?
yes, but he was there and he voted on that item. So next on our list is the sustainability assessment, and
yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and take you through this. The work has been being undertaken over the last few months. There was previous briefings with the committee during the drafting of the document that was led by Simon, obviously head of design at EDC, who committee will know. So following that engagement with the committee, consultation took place over the summer period, sort of heading into October. That was also included a session with some stakeholders. We invited the developers who are currently active in Ebbsfleet, and that was attended by various developers and their sort of sustainability advisors. So that was a helpful session. Generally, the consultation responses that we actually had in from the community relatively low, but that's relatively sort of consistent with the level of engagement on other on other documents. So the report in front of you.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I just check that Fred Marudis is still with us online?
Yes.
I'm still here. I'm definitely still here.
Sorry, we couldn't see your symbol there.
My icon. My icon. I'll keep my camera on just so you can check up on me.
Right, where was I? Yes, so consultation over the summer, that is summarised in the report. The key areas on the comments that we received are in the report, and then there's a full outline of the comments in Annex A. Subject to approval today by the committee, there is section 5, which outlines next steps, and that includes monitoring the use of the document over the next couple of years. Obviously, this general sort of field does sort of change relatively rapidly. Certainly, the knowledge and understanding, I think, around it does sort of mature. So the full document is attached in Annex B for approval. But I'm happy to take questions.
Anybody got questions or comments on this? Can I just mark on this? Can we, if we approve this, then we read a sustainability assessment summary table will be presented to committee as part of the committee report. So is that for future schemes? This will provide a matrix against which schemes will be assessed.
Yeah, so the guidance has different typologies, different types of application, whether it be commercial, residential, sort of public realm, and so forth. And the committee will then see the summary table with a nice tick box, hopefully easy to certainly get the summary in terms of the various different levels, but should hopefully provide a nice clear indication as to sort of how schemes sit I suppose alongside each other over time. So yeah, hopefully aim to assist negotiation between the officers and developers, and also assist the committee in understanding some of the slightly more technical parts of the.
Yes, I can.
Anybody who would like to contribute to this? No, just Valerie.
Just a quick one. Can I just ask about the sort of competing claims of other standards? And one of the reasons that the case for sustainable was withdrawn was there was a whole raft of standards actually at one time which were literally in competition. I think house builders were finding it all too challenging. But it is a shame in a way that this is coming out pretty much simultaneously with the net zero carbon building standard, which is really being heavily as part of the RBA core curriculum for CPD at the moment, and therefore so on. And I'm guessing the other institutes doing the same thing. So I'm sort of fearful in a way that maybe the same thing, you know, that we'll get all of these standards that aren't necessarily aligned. I mean, will it become absolutely mandatory for applicants to pursue this, or if they wanted to submit, you know, the net zero carbon standard? I realise that doesn't cover all of the indices that we're looking at. Would that be acceptable, or is this going to be absolutely mandatory?
So what the checklist does is it outlines different performance levels. So if, for example, something came along and a developer wanted to embrace a higher level of sustainability, sort of, you know, any of those sort of emerging, then logically that would then be in the highest category. This is around trying to support that conversation, explain to people. So what we've done, I guess, is we have looked at the sustainable performance framework, which we created as the EDC sort of as a corporate document, looking towards some of our own development schemes. The top level in the dark green category in this document meets that level. That doesn't exceed that, but it absolutely doesn't stop people embracing more if they opted to do more. What this tries to do is it tries to look against policy, because the policy is quite loose in terms of levels.
I can see it's broader based actually than similar equivalent, should we say, but it is broader based.
Good. But if we approve this, and if we then approve the validation checklist, applicants will have to fill in the form, which will give officers the information to carry out an assessment and to present it to the committee when it comes to committee.
Yes.
Which seems to me a desirable outcome, which means that minds are turned to this issue when they should be, and that it's addressed in a way that some might say is formulaic. I wouldn't say that, but requires applicants to address these criteria. Is that's the object? Is it?
Absolutely, and the new policy certainly in the Dartford plan requires information from applicants anyway for us to be able to assess schemes against policy. So this is a way to capture that information, summarize that information, so that we can then undertake that policy assessment.
And sorry,
does it exceed policy?
No.
Okay, that's helpful.
And as far as applicants are concerned, they know in advance the information they have to provide and the criteria they have to address, and hopefully it makes it easier for them to make a sound application.
Yeah, and on what we'll be doing in committee reports is explaining our view on policy compliance, because I can't sit here and then say, if you tick a certain number of boxes in a particular colour, that's then going to be okay. Each scheme is going to be different. We're going to have different conversations with developers on different sites, understanding different sort of constraints and site-specific issues. So the reason for our recommendation, whatever that may be, will then be sort of explained using the data in front of us. But it won't be a case of particular boxes get you over the line, particularly.
And we're going to review it biannually, says anyway.
Every 2 years, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Anything else, or shall we move to a vote on this? Recommendation again is to approve. Those in favour? Right. We're unanimous again so far, and we move on to the validation checklist update. So this is a validation checklist that we have already, but it's an update to it.
Yeah, Michael, I think, is going to take it.
Yeah, I'll do a short intro. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, just introducing this. Some members will be aware we had the validation checklist in place. We did do some sort of more substantial updates that were approved last December. So it's still fairly recent. It's being used, and for those who aren't aware, this obviously informs the planning requirements for applications in terms of supporting information, etc. So since December, there's been a couple of changes that need reporting in terms of draft local plan. Updated policies in April early this year, and also the introduction of mandatory biodiversity net gain. So there are kind of implications of those that require additional information to be submitted with planning applications. So they're probably the more minor updates to the existing document, really bringing it up to date factually. Primary change relates to the previous item, which is the sustainability design guide information and supporting information that's required to facilitate that. So the proposed primary updates are some additional requirements that link back to enabling us to assess sustainability, those elements more thoroughly. So it's essentially seeking approval for the updated version that's copied as an appendix to the report. The recommendation does seek approval for us to publish and use, but also to allow some minor updates in the coming months, year or so. There's these sort of similar factual type changes that we don't necessarily need to report back for committee approval. It also allows for some tweaks to the document. We have noticed there are a few typos in the document, so we're seeking for some approval to make those changes if members are happy with that. So I'll refer to the recommendation in the report for approval.
Any comments, observations, views from anybody? No. Well, again, we've got a recommendation for approval. Those in favour? Yep. Thank you. That's carried. We're now on to planning activity report, and this is a report for noting.
Yeah, so this is the usual report that we provide the committee in terms of speed and quality of decision making. This covers quarter 2. Apologies in 1.1, we should be referring to MHCLG, not DLUC now. See majors 100% in time and non-majors 86%. That was unfortunately in relation to one decision that was a bit of an admin error to be open to the committee about that. 3.3, just worthwhile noting, there's an awful lot of work the team do that don't fall within these statistics, an awful lot of condition discharge, non-material amendments, etc. And we've also expanded the information this quarter in relation to planning enforcement because that activity is increasing somewhat. But perhaps take any questions, otherwise it's for noting. Chair.
So on that, on the non-major applications determined against performance target, so there was a slight fall. You're saying that's one application?
One application, yep. And there was just a bit of miscommunication, I'm afraid, between when the decision was issued. Yeah, well, it actually was ready in time. Just a little frustrating.
Yeah, well, we've got a very good record up to now. So let's note our good record, and it's just a minor administrative error.
Yeah.
Good. Do we note that report?
Noted.
Yep.
I just asked
Sorry.
on the planning enforcement again. This is the thing was the one that we talked about previously. It's it is draconian to ask a resident to remove an extension. Are they asked to lodge an application, or is it something that developments through? That's quite a serious thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when it was noticed, there was initial contact made with the homeowner to kind of explain. Obviously, I think a lot of these things are sometimes done genuinely with intentions. They're not aware that they're breaching planning control. So, I mean, often these things have been done. They can be regularised, or else they're probably okay in planning terms. So they can either make an application to kind of regularise it, or else we wouldn't be expedient to take enforcement action. But I think in this case there were some discussions. There couldn't be agreement in terms of what was needed to resolve the issue. So it wasn't solvable by painting it or changing it in any way. So it had to be, in our view, had to be removed. So that's why we progressed to the enforcement notice. But there was certainly an element of communication with the homeowner in advance of that. Sometimes these things get resolved more amicably in a way, but the only route was to serve the enforcement notice, unfortunately.
Thank you.
We do have residence guides that we kind of publish to kind of try to inform people what they can and can't do. We've got one for each of our development sites. So that's a helpful kind of first port of call for people that might want to understand in layman's language what you can and can't do in a way. But that doesn't always get out. So
Be worth putting it in newsletters and things like that, because I think you're right. Often people simply do not understand planning at all. It's their home, their castle.
Right, so shall we note that report? Yes, yeah, so that's noted, thank you. We go on to delegated items.
Yeah, so this just covers the month of September. So there's 14 decisions on here. So this is the decisions that are signed off by myself and the team. So happy to take any questions or follow up later. Obviously, if any committee members have any questions later.
Anybody got any issues they'd like to raise? No? Well, I suppose that we note the report.
Thank you.
Thank you for dealing with those decisions.
I have to say, I don't deal with it very much at all these days. So thank you.
Yeah, but you take the credit.
I do.
And the blame.
Yes, I do.
Right, so we now then get on to the Alkerdon Hub application. So we're going to wave goodbye some of our members. So we might just take a 2-minute break while we do that.
Okay.
But we're keeping Lee and Fred. Good. You need.
I'm not going anywhere, Neil.
Jolly good.
Yeah.
Neither am I.
Could you try and leave the screen?
Right. We recording again. We're now going to consider the application of the Alcaden Hub. And I note that Valerie Owen, Councillor David Moat and Penny Marsh have all left the meeting because of their involvement in the Garden City Community Trust. But there are 4 of us left, and so we are quorate, including 2 EDC board members. So, officer presentation, Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The next item is a reserved matters proposal for the Alcaden Hub pursuant to the outline planning permission for Eastern Quarry. This diagram sets out the structure of the outline planning permission for the Eastern Quarry development site for context, the purpose of which is to demonstrate the complex nature and the suite of documents informing development that are drawn down through the permission to culminate in the Area Master Plan and Design Code, which guides detailed reserved matters schemes. Of note for this scheme is the obligations for community spaces as set out in Section 106 Agreement and Community and Leisure Facilities Strategy. By way of context, the Eastern Quarry Master Plan secured under the outline comprises 3 villages, separated by areas of landscaped open space. 5 and 10-minute walking radii are shown on the main plan, highlighting the principles of sustainable travel by creating walkable neighbourhoods, as well as a fast-track corridor which runs centrally through the middle of the site. Orange shaded areas identify the centres in each village, Alcaden Market Centre being the principal of the 3 centres and the heart of the development site. The application is located at the very core of Alcaden Market Centre and would serve as a centrepiece of the site to deliver essential facilities for the rapidly growing community. By way of delivery, the hub would be anticipated to open March 27, by which time several other key development projects would also be delivered. The application site is located in a highly sustainable location on a principal junction between Fast Track and the North-South Primary Street. Site level changes, which fall from north-east to south-west by 5 metres, have been accommodated within the layout design of the building and surrounding ancillary space, providing full accessibility in and around the building. Access routes around the site are legible and prioritise active modes of transport. Primary access would be provided from Fast Track on the principal elevation of the building, connecting pedestrian and cycle routes secured in the adjacent streets, with cycle parking located at the front of the building. A single vehicular access is proposed from the north-south primary street to the parking area at the rear of the building. The proposal demonstrates a good level of inclusive design, incorporating generous lift sizes to accommodate wheelchair use. The proposal seeks to deliver several community facilities obligated under the outline permission by combining them within a single building. The obligated spaces include a health facility, lifelong learning centre or LLC, social care provision, community police accommodation, job centre and religious facility. The outline permission identifies space requirements and finish for each of the facilities. Since the outline permission was originally secured in 2007, delivery of services and best practice has moved on, identified through engagement with the local community, KCC and the ICB, who are anticipated to operate spaces within the building. The prescription of space allocated to services under the outline is no longer reflective of the way these services are now delivered, and spatial requirements are smaller overall due to a desire to integrate services. Notwithstanding uncertainties regarding the exact operation of the spaces due to ongoing discussions with operators, delivery of the requisite floor space has been demonstrated in compliance with the outline planning permission and shown on the floor plans on the slide. But the proposal seeks to deliver an enhanced scheme that provides a more bespoke range of uses in addition to the Section 106 requirements, whilst maintaining the delivery of the overall obligated floor space. Complementary additional uses have been included to reflect the needs of the local community, and consequently, some uses have been reimagined, including the addition of co-working space, family hub, multi-purpose studios, and a cafe. The principle of co-location by delivering services in a single building is welcomed as best practice, providing a spatial focus within the development site, generating greater activity and footfall and better opportunities for the flexibility of spaces as demands evolve. The internal layout has been divided into 3 distinct areas: the health facility to the west, hall and studios to the centre, and the triple LC to the east, with complementary uses carefully considered and located next to each other. Discussions with the applicant regarding full integration of spaces across the building was discussed in the interest of best practice and increased flexibility. However, the sensitivities around health services and associated hygiene and cleanliness, together with the preference of the ICB to have a degree of separation, has been reflected in the layout while maintaining internal connections. The Area Master Plan identifies the location of the site within the market centre character area, which allows freedom of architectural expression whilst ensuring delivery of an individual style. A landmark status is also identified on the southeast corner. Architectural analysis has been undertaken to survey the character within the surrounding neighbourhood and North Kent, together with an historical analysis of the site. Consideration has also been given to the Design for Ebbsfleet guide. Inspiration has been drawn from both the industrial heritage and Ebbsfleet's dramatic chalk landscapes and defining characteristics incorporated into the design of the building, notably the vertical emphasis, single gridded buildings and undulated forms. The narrative fits well within a singular building of this scale and is specific to the site to help create an individual style. The scale and massing of the building rises from west to east, reaching its pinnacle on the eastern corner, where it is articulated as a 4-storey landmark tower that holds the corner at the main street intersection. While the internal layout has been divided into 3 distinct areas, the facade has been successfully developed using a grid to establish a unifying order across the scheme to read as a single form reflective of its civic role. In terms of materiality, the facades are expressed in light grey brick with light mortar, reflecting the colouring of the chalk. This is supplemented by contrasting but complementary feature green and orange tones that have been derived from the landscape of the cliffs and plants, together with distinct green fluted tile, which will create interest to the facade. Base studies have been developed to show the construction detail, including inset windows, coping and glazing sections to help secure the delivery of high quality detailing on site. A robust parking strategy has been developed, supported by Kent Highways, which has been underpinned by trip generation analysis and aligns with the sustainable location of the site. A peak demand of 35 parking spaces has been identified, with a delivery on site of 43 spaces, which allows for a spare capacity of 7 car spaces. Of these, there is 1 servicing and delivering bay, 4 are accessible spaces, and 10% active and 10% passive EV charging provision will also be provided. The strategy also accommodates for parking to serve drop-off and pick-ups from the adjacent education campus, as secured under the campus reserved matters application of 11 spaces. 1 ambulance bay, as obligated under the outline permission, is also provided, together with 41 covered parking cycle spaces. The strategy aligns with the EDC sustainable transport strategy. Framework travel plans and management strategies have been provided to support the application, with final details to be secured by condition. There is limited space within the site, but it has been used to successfully support the building to deliver an effective landscaping scheme. A plaza with seating area is proposed to the front, creating socialising spaces. Space has been maximised where possible to provide breakout areas to serve users, including second floor terrace. Planting has been maximised where possible, including provision of a common oak tree within the parking area, an uncommonly utilised species which is welcomed. With regards to sustainability, overall, the building performs well. An energy statement has been developed following the Be Lean, Be Clean, Be Green energy hierarchy, incorporating a range of passive design and energy efficient measures, including natural ventilation. The scheme has been tested against the EDC's emerging sustainability assessment, which identifies good levels of energy use intensity and performs well against waste materials, health and well-being, and natural environment requirements. Concerns were raised in respect of overheating, concern that was also raised by the ICB, and window sizes have been reduced to help address this. While future predicted weather scenarios show overheating to be a potential issue, the applicant proposes the use of mechanical cooling in the form of a variant refrigerant volume system, VRF, which is a form of air source heat pump. PV panels are also provided for renewable energy, together with a green roof, to increase biodiversity and slow surface water runoff. The proposal comfortably hits a BREEAM Excellent rating. The site is currently isolated from other sites and would not cause disturbance to neighbouring amenity. Testing has been undertaken to ensure noise can be controlled to a reasonable level. Conditions have been imposed to further control the details of noise and management to prevent harmful amenity impacts arising from development. The building performs extremely well against the Building for Healthy Life framework, achieving 10 greens and 1 amber. The applicant has worked well with EDC officers and engaged extensively to design a carefully considered and extremely well resolved building, both internally and externally, which complies with local and national policy and extends beyond the needs of the Outline Planning Permission and would serve as a high quality, bespoke and vibrant landmark. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as listed in the report, including a pre-start condition, which has been agreed with the applicant, and the supplementary information.
Thank you very much. So I think we'll now move to the people. No speakers registered against, speakers registered for, and I think we've got Mark Patchett here and Andrew Nerva. 5 minutes, how you use it, up to you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Andrew Nerva, and I'm an associate from HTA Design. Joined by Mark Patchett from EDC Garden City Trust, and we're pleased to speak to you tonight about our proposals for the hub at Alcadon. The hub will be a landmark building that co-locates community facilities and services to provide an integrated learning, health and wellbeing model suited for modern living, as well as providing jobs, training opportunities for local people. Positioned alongside Alcadon Academy, the hub will serve as essential social infrastructure for the new and existing community at Whitecliff. The proposal delivers the minimum floor space requirements for various community uses set out in Section 106 and Community and Leisure Strategy for the Whitecliff development. However, the building has been designed to work much harder than that. The proposal adopts a long life, loose fit approach that provides the opportunity to overlap the originally envisaged community uses with others to meet the needs of local people now and in the future, therefore ensuring long-term flexibility and resilience. Critical to developing the brief and achieving successful outcome for the project has been ensuring the emerging proposals were discussed with key stakeholders from the outset and throughout the design development process. The additional elements proposed are being funded by EDC, and extensive consultation, coordination, and cooperation with the development team at EDC has taken place. The design team worked collaboratively with EDC Garden City Trust, who are intended to be the long-term custodians of the hub, as well as with EDC and KCC planning officers as part of the pre-application process, and with representatives from Kent and Medway Integrated Care Board. EDC Garden City Trust have also engaged with various other stakeholders to inform the proposed uses, which Mark will touch on shortly. The emerging proposals have been presented to the EDC Community Board, where attendees were able to ask questions and provide feedback. Consultation has been undertaken with Kent Police's Design and Crime Officer, which has resulted in a design that maximises ground floor activity, natural surveillance to create safe and welcoming streets and spaces. Public consultation has been undertaken, including a dedicated project website, an online survey, a live webinar, and an in-person exhibition. This engagement has allowed residents and stakeholders to review and respond to the emerging proposals, with feedback influencing the placement of the health facility, cafe, library and hall at the ground floor level for convenience and ease of access. The hub will be a distinctive centrepiece, adopting an appearance strategy and materials palette inspired by dramatic landscapes that surround the site, shaped by human activity and industry over hundreds of years. The proposal provides a fully inclusive and accessible environment, including level access entrances, lift access to all upper floors, and accessible WCs, including changing places facilities. Active travel is promoted, located in the hub a short distance from the bus stop at Fast Track Plaza, and providing a safe and attractive arrival experience for pedestrians and cyclists. The hub is designed to achieve BREEAM Excellent, utilising passive design, energy efficient measures, and renewable and low carbon technology to reduce operational energy and whole life carbon, whilst also promoting the health and well-being of users. Overall, the scheme represents a high quality, distinctive, inclusive and sustainable development within the heart of Alcadon Market Centre.
Under 1 minute left.
Okay. I'm Mark Patchett, leading on the development and day-to-day management of EDC Garden City Trust. a charity established to own and manage the community assets across the Garden City. And as a team, we've been involved for 5 years in liaising with and between the potential users of LLC, including the public sector, KCC, police, ICB, faith and community groups and so on. We have a board of trustees made up of multiple stakeholders, including residents, and are very pleased at this final design for this facility, as it does create a landmark building to meet both specific identified statutory and community uses, whilst providing the flexibility to meet the growing need of new uses serving this expanding community. The Trust will take full operational responsibility for the building, staffing, cleaning, servicing, enabling the multiple users to access the spaces they need when they need them, and at an affordable rate, by the hour, by the day, or in some cases for KCC dedicated. A detailed financial model has been carefully researched to set out the costs of maintaining and managing the building, not just in the next few years, but ensuring sinking funds are set aside to ensure it can be rebuilt in 75 years' time. So this is a landmark, permanent and sustainable legacy asset for the community.
Thank you very much. Has anybody, I've got one or two questions. Have other committee members got questions they would like to ask? Shall I ask mine first and then see with others, or is there anybody else? I'll do that. Can I, this is probably just my misunderstanding, but I might as well clarify it. If you look at the CGI, which is on the screen, what I'm interested in is whether you create a building that has a civic presence. I look at that CGI, but then I looked at the elevation, which was shown before in the presentation, which shows that the central building has some kind of, not quite a pediment, but something that rises above the railing either side. There it is, which then creates a kind of feature. Now that doesn't appear on the CGIs, or doesn't appear to, unless I just can't see it properly. But if somebody could just clarify that, I'd be very grateful.
So just to clarify, the bit that you're referring to in the top elevation there is actually the roof of the hall, which is set back from the main facade. So what the elevation is showing is that roof of the hall beyond the primary elevation. It's actually on the rear of the elevation. You can see actually that's the hall volume, but in the massing and on the front elevation, that's actually set back from the primary facade.
So what will you see if you're on the fast track road?
So from the fast track, you won't see that. I think it'll only be visible in sort of the longer distance views, perhaps from the major urban park or from a higher elevation. But from the fast track, that will be hidden behind the primary.
So you're not going to see it like, and it looks as though there's a kind of string course or masonry course or something. Will you see that? So just under the two, there's a line across.
Yes.
Is that just the top of the building?
Yeah, so that's the precast coping. So that will be visible.
If we go back to the CGI.
Sorry, there's some detailing on the base studies, I think, that shows that little bit there. And then the CGI.
Yeah, so on the bottom.
So it's there.
Yeah.
That's at roughly the same height as the railing that you see to the east.
Yes.
Thank you. Lee.
Thank you, Neil. Whereas I don't think it's necessarily a planning consideration, I wonder if it is actually too small and not as big a statement as we might have liked, because this is the community building, isn't it? The centre of a rising population, housing population. What troubles me is the hall is 200, accommodate 200 people. I live opposite a church which has between 400 and 600 people every Sunday. And this is going to be a multi-faith centre. I wonder if, in fact, we have not been as bold in terms of imagination as we might have been. I'm also, whereas again, I know this isn't a planning consideration, but at the time you're giving Kent County Council a very key role in this at a time when they're cutting down youth services and community activities. And what worries me is, are we using this space to full capacity, and is it really the statement building that we all want? Having said that, in terms of facilities, I think that's really what the community needs, and I'm not going to criticise that in any way. Thank you, Neil.
Anybody else who'd like to ask a question before we go on to general discussion later?
Maybe I'll ask a question which will prompt general discussion. I mean, I haven't been able to compare this with the designs from the pre-app, but it feels as though there've been a number of design changes to incorporate detail and emphasize the statement nature of the building. Am I just imagining that?
Anybody want to answer that?
I'm not sure in terms of with reference to the pre-app. Is that, you mean the original submission?
I think from when you presented it to the committee, when Fred would have seen it.
Oh, okay. So
your colleague, Colin Ainger, presented it, and I've got his name right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the question is, what changes have been made of substance?
So I think to address that question, I think we've obviously taken the time working with EDC officers to really set out on and sort of nailing down a design narrative, and that's come from, as mentioned in the presentation, sort of an analysis of the sort of local history and the industrial heritage of the site, and the sort of the landscape that surrounds the site as existing. So we spent a lot of time trying to distill that into sort of a contemporary interpretation of sort of a factory or warehouse to facilitate the community uses, and work with this kind of a long life use fit approach. So the development of the kind of the gridded facade does allow for flexibility in the internal layouts, which can change to suit the needs of the local community for today and as it changes in the future. And then we've tried to add flourishes to the building, which provide a finesse and sort of architectural flourish to the materials. So using the terracotta fluted tiles, which pick up on the green mossy tones of the chalk cliffs, above the chalk cliffs. I think that was something that was maybe not shown in the previous presentation that we provided, but it's now evident in current proposals.
All right, that hasn't helped me that much. So all I've got is some tiles since last time, but I can't believe that's right.
So, if we finish the questions to the promoter applicant team, it may be that the officers can help on that.
I hope so.
Should we finish questions to the, sorry, Mark, you wanted to
Well, I was just going to add, I think your question was about the exterior, but I just wanted to add, in case you were also wondering about the inside, a lot of changes were made internally based on all of the discussions we had with the users, particularly the 5 different county council departments and the faith groups and so on, and the different uses. I can go into more detail if it's helpful, but there were considerable layout changes internally in the way those spaces are used and configured, and to be future-proof, to make sure that things change. So, for example, around the library, and whether or not, as you pointed out, whether libraries are going to be here in the future or not, we don't know. Future-proofing, but planning those things accordingly. So there were a lot of internal changes.
Any other questions for applicants' representatives? No. Well, if I can invite you to take one step back, and then we'll move to discussion. Caroline, I don't know whether you can assist on this question on what's changed since the pre-app.
Yeah, so we had a session with the architects to sort of discuss making more of an emphasis around the design narrative and how that might be done. Principal concerns were around bringing this the gridded feature to the fore. That wasn't as clear as on the previous plans. Also, the monotony of the roof was flagged as a bit of a concern, just to create some more movement through that. So there also have been a change in the scale of the windows as a result of a consideration around the overheating. So the actual depth of the glazing elements has been reduced, but the bays have been supplemented in depth by this fluted tile. The top sort of the roof detailing, the piers have been continued upwards with the introduction of a sort of feature railing. So the perception is actually the grid structure is more emphasised than it was previously, where it was previously just straight across. And similarly, this the same application in the entrance sections of the building has applied a similar principle. So in effect, there would be some movement up and down with the line of the roof. There was also some work, probably quite subtle, done to the bay features on the health end of the building. Again, trying to elongate the bays to emphasise the grid, so they have been extended down to ground level to sort of ground the building. So, I mean, they haven't been extreme changes, they have been quite subtle changes, but they do align with our desire to bring out more of the design narrative.
That's really helpful, Caroline.
Any other comments or observations from anybody, any committee members? No. Yes, Fred.
Is this the time for general discussion, or are you about to come on to that?
General discussion.
I'll just pick up on Caroline said, and actually you say all those are subtle, but actually they're the ones that I was picking up on and thought I hadn't imagined. And to my way of thinking, they have immeasurably improved the flow of the building, the narrative of the building, and it is the statement that I thought it should be, we thought it should be, and I think looks way more like now. So I'm very pleased with what's been done. It may only be tinkering, but gosh, that tinkering I think has made a difference for the better.
I think that of the four of us who are here, it was Fred and I who were both involved in that pre-application. So we saw the original proposals. I agree. I still have a concern about the degree of statement for this important civic building, but I'm satisfied that there has been an improvement. And I think, as Fred says, the flow of the building is so much better. There are three distinct elements to it. You can see those three distinct elements, and you are invited in by the treatment of the centre of the building, whilst having the so-called landmark element at the eastern end. But Lee.
Thank you, Neil. I mean, I take the point that you've made, and I think this is a building which is much needed by the community there. I'm guided by what you and Fred have said, that it's an improvement. I mean, I would prefer something bolder and more of a statement, but I'm more than happy to go along and support the application as it stands.
Any more contributions to the discussion? So, yes.
So just before the vote, I appreciate that the public speaker there mentioned the EDC development sort of team involvement in this. We do normally note that there are handling arrangements in place. So just for the minutes, particularly Julia, handling arrangements for this scheme were online, aren't they, Michael? So we've got processes, obviously, for separation of function as per other schemes.
Thank you. But the applicant in this case
not us.
Is not
Yes.
the Development Corporation. Despite that, handling arrangements have been in place. There's been a very careful approach to this, as is demonstrated by the fact that the members of the committee associated with the Garden Trust left the meeting before we decided this application. So are we content to move to a vote? Well, the recommendation is to approve. Those in favour? Well, that's 4 out of 4. Well, thank you very much indeed, everybody. It's been a slightly longer meeting than usual, but I'd like to thank the officers for all the effort that goes into these reports, because they're presented at double quick time, but they take an enormous amount of work, consideration, and also the degree of engagement with the applicants, because we're only going to get designs of the quality we're looking for through that engagement. So thank you very much to all involved, and that brings the meeting to a close. Yes, thank you. We